Welcome, friends and allies, to the Exploring More podcast. This is Michael Thompson, and I have with me my partner in crime, I think always, right?
Well, you don't know how to run all this stuff. So.
That's true.
Yeah.
So
it's job security. I don't show anybody else how to do
That's right. I like that. So that was SJ. You guys know SJ's voice. And then two other voices you're going to recognize who are back in the studio with us. The lovely Sherry Jennings and the amazing Robin Thompson are with us to talk today. Yeah, say hi. You can say howdy.
Hello.
Hello. This will probably broadcast in a couple days, I guess Saturday, so it's Wednesday, but we're...
Yeah, we just felt like there's an opportunity to share a little bit about what God's been doing in our hearts over the last couple of weeks with this coronavirus thing. And at first we were like, well, there's an episode already ready for this Thursday, and do we want to replace this with that? And I went, wait a minute. We can release it whenever we want. So that's why we're dropping this one on Saturday.
Yeah,
so
we're the bosses.
That's right.
We're in charge.
That's right. So it's like a bonus episode.
And I think just talking before we got going, kind of what is this? What are we entitling this? And it's courage. Courage during hard times. Mm-hmm. Courage during challenging times. Mm-hmm. And so we felt like, it would be good to grab the girls and just settle into a conversation a bit about how this is impacting our lives and how are we walking with God in light of an incredibly thick layer of news and information. I've gotten more emails from people that I had no idea I was on their subscription list, just letting us know what they're doing, in light of coronavirus. So I feel like there is, people are wanting to be responsible so that they don't have to be responsible for the spread of this. And we're a few weeks on the other side of China and Italy on this, so we're watching. It's not like the outbreak was here. It's moved here, and it's different than other. We were talking about late 1800s, early 1900s when the Spanish flu. You said like 45 million people.
Yeah, the estimates are 45 to 60 million people in about 18 months were killed by the Spanish flu. But here's why. They didn't know what was causing it. They didn't know about microbes and germs. And I shared with you the number one treatment during the time was to give somebody a bunch of whiskey and then bloodletting. So we're going to thin out your blood and then drain it from your body, which doesn't really help, but it just gives you an indicator. It was only 100 years ago, but we had no idea what we were dealing with.
Right. Mm-hmm. Not long after that, there was a world war.
Yeah.
And then there was another world war.
Right.
And so these are, things that are impacting global. And somebody, was sharing about, some historical things like that today. And my response was, well, we're in a very different place 125 years later. Mm-hmm. The way news even travels is in seconds, if not faster.
I think we were talking about the Great Depression.
Yeah.
And the stock
economy.
Market crash,
That's right.
the economy.
The economy.
It was weeks before news went from, one side of the country to the other.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that we're necessarily smarter. I'm just saying that there are a lot of things in place different than, the Spanish flu as it moved through. Technology has given us access to one another in seconds rather than, some kind of telegram kind of...
the Pony Express.
All of the... But I think the point that I want to get to is it's serious. It's very serious. And here's where we want to go with courage. When we look at these kinds of challenges and trials that are not isolated to one country or even one community, but even in those places, it seems to be that trials and challenges and difficulties, they call to the human heart and invite us to better places and better things. It doesn't always look that way. It's a process to get there. But when there are crises, there are people, right? First responders, and maybe call them last responders, but there are movements within human beings to come to the aid of other human beings. There are people treating this virus. There are people researching how to treat this virus. They're looking today. news is happening so fast, right? But they're looking for vaccines. They're looking for even the test kits. Where we were a week ago and where we are now it's literally a light year.
Yeah.
And what is being and developing and evolving. And with all of that going on, we just wanted to sit around the microphones for a few minutes and just share a little bit about how are we walking with God in these circumstances. And that's really where I want to start, you guys, is how is this impacting you? Where are you today? Where's your heart today in light of what we're all going through?
Well, I know for me, a few days ago, about 4 days ago, right? Let's say today's Wednesday. So maybe Sunday or Monday, when it started to really get real and feel really, really close to home, I woke up and it was a normal morning. I felt normal. I got my coffee. I came upstairs to do my thing, spend time with Jesus. And I sat down on the sofa with my coffee. And all the things started one by one, the thoughts of what I needed to do. Texts started coming in. I shouldn't have had my phone with me. But I started thinking of I got to get groceries. What if the groceries, all the things that I needed to do to prepare. And I noticed my anxiety level started to skyrocket.
Mm-hmm.
And I started to notice my breathing because I think I mentioned this the last time we were talking. I'm really trying to pay attention to my body in moments like that. Where am I holding on to tension and stress and anxiety? Where do I feel it? And to let myself feel it and be curious what is going on there. So I was aware I was almost completely holding my breath. I was hardly breathing. And when I was breathing in those moments, it was really shallow, quick breaths. So I just was, okay, I know what to do because in our Monday night group, Sherry, we've been reading Get Your Life Back at John's new book, and it has been so good for us. And the Pause app that they have put out at Ransomed Heart has been really, really helpful. And so I did that. And it beautifully invites you to sit with God. And right out of the gate, 3 deep, slow breaths. And then you're praying scripture. I'm focusing my gaze on him. And so my breathing returns to normal. It's a grounding exercise. And my gaze was back on Jesus. And then I could move in my time with him. So that was helpful. And then the next morning, I woke up, tension in my shoulders. And so we got to do it again. Right.
Yeah.
And throughout the day, I'll find,
Right.
even as we're driving or different things that we hear on the news or we see a notification come across our phone. The invitation to breathe and to breathe him in and speak against the anxiety and the fear. And I trust you, Jesus. And those breath prayers that fix my gaze on him and invite me to trust have been really helpful.
It makes me think of a question for you, Robin. Are you motivated to do that for yourself or for others more, would you say? Is it, because you've got daughters, you've got other people that are looking to you for guidance or counsel or what's Robin going to do? You've got friends that maybe you're going to ask you. So does that enter into your thought process as you are taking those deep breaths and releasing the tension? Is it primarily for yourself, or are you thinking of others? That's a
great question. I'm first and foremost thinking of myself, to be very honest.
Yeah,
because it's what we do when we're present. We're very present. I'm being present to my body and present to God. And I also always have my journal right there with me. And so when something happens or God reveals something to me, or I have a thought that I think is God revealing something to me, I write it down. Part of that is for me, and part of that is for me to remember to share, whether it's on Monday night or with my daughters or on a podcast or whatever. So it's both and.
Yeah, that's great.
It's a good question.
It makes me think too, Michael has said many times, others of us have used this kind of metaphor before, where when you're on an airplane,
oxygen mask.
Yeah, they tell you to put your oxygen mask on first so that then you can help your children or your loved ones or whoever is with you, because you're not any help to them passed out on the floor.
Right. Right.
Yeah. So I had planned on talking about that, listeners. That I'm confident that question and that focus came from the Holy Spirit. So take that as you will, and just remember, it's very important for us to take those moments that Robin suggested and is implementing herself, and just breathe. Just breathe, because you're not helpful to any of the loved ones around you if you're passed out on the floor or panicking or whatever it might be. So, please
Yeah,
take
we'll get to that in a minute. There's a couple stories that, as we get around the table about this. So, Sherry.
it's interesting how that mindset of pausing and taking deep breaths is really infiltrating the culture. Yes, you referred to John Eldridge's new book, but I'm watching the Weather Channel this morning, and on the Weather Channel, the host brings up a picture of sunrise over a harbor up in Massachusetts. It happened to be, but it was a beautiful sunrise, and she just talked about, take this in, and let's everybody take a deep breath in and just look at the color in the sky, and then take a deep breath out. I mean, and this is the Weather Channel, you know what I mean?
Yes.
Where they're leading people to just calm down a little bit, you know?
Well, it's not new.
Right.
Breathing and grounding, this has been around for centuries, but I know I'm just learning about it. And I know 2 of my 3 daughters use the Headspace app and have found it to be so brilliantly helpful for this. And for example, Ashley was telling me she uses it in the mornings right out of bed and couples it with the daily prayer, the Pause app. But again, it's breathing and grounding. And for such a time as this, with the climate of fear or the climate of anxiety,
uncertainty.
Yes, it's really important. And they guide you through it. It's like a guided meditation. And it's been really helpful. It's been really good. They have all different topics, and they have a free 2-week trial.
Yeah, let me interject. We're trying to move more resources for Zoe.org to free spaces, free things. So we're trying to move more resources over there, and we're trying to move it to a more prevalent place, like on our homepage. So listeners, you can go to Zoe.org, and right there on the homepage is going to be encouragement, courage for these times. And the daily prayer is one of those that, quick access to this audio of walking through the larger story, prayer in the larger story, because we live in the larger story. God's not going, what's going on down there? Right. There's something, and that's either comforting or really, really bothersome, depending on who you are and where you're at. And so there's a lot more to talk about. We'll get to that, but I just wanted to point people to the website for a second.
That's a great idea.
For more resources on the homepage. But Sherry, what's God been showing you about you, and how are these days impacting your heart and your walking with Him?
Well, I love that Robin started with, it got real for me when. And for me, we've been in the thick of, for months, getting ready for the Heart of a Warrior Allies Advance. And so last week it's go time. We're printing things. We're in the short rows of all the things you can only do the week before the event. So that Friday morning, I came in early, figured I'd get a head start on everything. And the rest of the team came in, and Michael, you got that call from Young Life.
Yeah, well, I had an email already queued up because it was Monday,
right?
And we needed to let some of these 175 guys know a little bit. And listeners, if you don't know, the heavy lifting for our conferences really does fall on Sherry for many, many weeks. Your registration coordination, your communication pieces, you do a phenomenal job. But here we are, like you said, in the short rows, and you're about to give all the packets and all the stuff to the team that's going to move up to Rockbridge this week.
Right.
As we're podcasting now, and even the delivery of this podcast availability, we would be in the middle of that Allies Advance at Young Life Rockbridge Camp. So, yes, and then the phone call comes.
And we're around the table, and Michael gets off the phone. And before he got on the phone, it's hold the presses, it's Young Life. And when you get off the phone, it's, all right, all the camps worldwide are closing through April 3rd.
Mm-hmm.
So what's next? And the team started talking. We started talking
There was about a 5-second
Right.
quiet.
There was, because it was stunning.
It was stunning, but yeah.
It was stunning. And you mentioned in an email that you sent to the I-team the array of emotions around the table. And I just wanted to cry.
Mm-hmm.
I was just so overwhelmingly sad. And it took me by surprise because I didn't expect that.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't for, someone was saying, it's okay, the work won't go to waste. And
No.
that wasn't even it. It was, I had listened to, and we get to be in this small circle with these men whose hearts are for men and their families.
Yeah.
And they've been so beautifully intentionally working on every detail for what these men would experience at the Allies' advance.
Yeah.
And then for it to come to a halt and know that they wouldn't gather and they wouldn't get to explore their stories this way or experience all those incredible details that these men have, I won't say agonized over, but certainly been walking in for this. That grief, that loss for me was just overwhelming. And it was great because Ashley was on the Zoom call. We had some folks on the team on Zoom and the rest of us around the table. And Ashley's texting me, well, cry then.
Yes.
It's okay, cry. And allow
Let yourself
that space.
to feel it, what you're feeling, and the grief.
It's funny, I didn't get a message from her, so punch something then, which was what I wanted to do.
Yeah, that's
maybe
because breaking anything.
Maybe because Sherry verbalized,
I'm teasing.
I want to cry. or
punch
feel
Greg.
it current.
That's not nice.
Yeah. No, but
Sorry, Greg.
No, but I mean, that was my initial reaction. Then from there, we're taking the steps that we need to take to do what you have to do when an event is canceled. And that evening, we had plans because it was my birthday the next day, and it was Robin's birthday on the following Monday, and dinner for a large group of us, and then going to see Les Mis. And so trying to pull my head up out of the disappointment and the sadness of the cancellation and heading over for dinner and showing up and finding out that they've canceled Les Mis.
One day more, another day, another destiny. This never-ending road to Calvary.
Yeah. Yeah, this was at our
More
Performing
sadness.
Arts Center. I mean, this was a big deal, and we felt like the clock was running a little bit, but that we were getting into the fourth quarter of freedom,
Right.
like the kind of freedom that we knew in terms of being able to go and move, and people were, the cancellations were beginning, and the alterations of things, and so it felt like loss. We were losing things.
Yeah, at every turn.
That,
You
it was a
know.
lot of loss.
So it was good to be in that room. It was good to laugh and eat cake and eat really good food and just be together.
Yeah, I love that you brought that up. It was so good to be in that room. We ended up in a private room. There were a little over a dozen of us, friends and allies and team members. And it was like we were insulated, from what was going on. And Michael sent a text out the next day, I think. I don't think any of us realized how important that time together was and what a gift it was. Listeners, you got to picture this. We were in a private room, and it wasn't just like walking through a regular door. They had a giant sliding door, like a barn door, and it had been covered with metal. Just to be, the design element was this kind of really tough-looking metal that they put on this door, and then they slid it almost like you're closing the door of a bunker.
Mm-hmm.
And then, Michael, you sent out a text the next day in that regard, that it was like we were safe in a little bunker together.
Mm-hmm. In a bomb shelter.
Yeah.
Yeah. So going in Friday before this week that we're podcasting and releasing, it was, Jesus, what do I do? What do we do? The responsibility for these men, travel. 17 states, they're coming from all over the country, wanting to be responsible. There were some government officials taking some pretty hard stances at that point, and schools were starting to close. Our daughter, her University of North Carolina was shutting down. University of Virginia was shutting. The spring breaks don't come back. There was a lot of shutting down or pushing pause buttons on what we would say normal March Madness, I think, had been canceled. NBA had been canceled. So
Yeah.
there was things like that. So
Baseball,
those were,
hockey.
I was facing that, asking Jesus, so what are we going to do? And felt like he said, I'll show you, walk with me. You'll know more come Monday, which that wasn't really the answer I was looking for, kind of what should I do? But it was the answer I needed. You'll see, we will see.
Right.
That is a sentiment of these days in walking with God. I would share from my heart to our men and women that are listening that it is a we shall see. And every day is really like that. This just brings it to the surface in a very different way. I want to live like that, honestly. I want to live more and more heightened.
It's a great invitation.
I want to live more and more alert and oriented. I want to live more and more. Yes, I'd rather it not be with a pandemic virus movement, but there's another virus that is being released in the spiritual realm, and it's this virus of fear. The enemy is opportunistic, and so we see there's a reason why there's so many verses and passages, 365 plus about fear not, don't be afraid, and the promises and the comfort that comes after those verses. And yet those verses, Old Testament and New, they come because there's some circumstances that you could be afraid. And so I think that when we have such a disruption to day, and we feel kind of like when those planes hit the Twin Towers, we can't take our loved ones to the gate anymore, and we can't be there when they come off the plane. I mean, TSA is now a new normal because of a very eventful thing. And yet, we are the kids of the 60s and 70s. I mean, how many of us have that little scar on your shoulder, right? From the vaccines that we got
TB.
for smallpox and
TB was the
mumps
four-pronged thing,
and
I guess.
all kinds of things that and now our kids don't have those, so that has come and gone. But this is just an interesting thing. The next day, as you said that, SJ and Sherry, that's when it hit my heart a little heavier, because it took my heart a while to catch up to the grieving. That dinner was huge. The laughter, the banquet in the middle of a bunker because of that door. And then the next morning I was, like you, getting up, moving around, Robin, and like the Jennings do too, just somewhat routine. And there were notifications. So many friends and allies had sent encouragement, and some had sent questions, and having to respond or getting to respond to them. That's when my tears came. That's when I felt the loss more intensely. And it was hard. It was a hard day, that Saturday.
And it's not the loss of getting to do a weekend event. It's the loss of what God does in that environment. What the men experience, what we experience. We've done enough of them now to know, even though we're delivering messages and kind of arranging for things, and you're the event coordinator and you're on the prayer team, and, when these men go, God's always got something for us too, and so there's that loss, but just the images of the men being together and awakening to new things. And so having to process that and grieve that loss, and then move to a place of, God has this isn't a surprise to him. So the packages that he wants to deliver, they might be rerouted. From our perspective, they're not rerouted from his, and having to come to that place of understanding.
It won't be the last time he changes our plans. The weight of it, all those men, because there were some who it was going to be a reunion, so the party was canceled, even though there was training and healing. For others, the longing they had to learn how to combat and fight against the enemy's whispers, so that their training was canceled. One was a party. Here's this training.
The longing for relief.
And
we were going to honor some veterans.
There was a lot. There was a lot going on. And so we shall see. If not this, then God, how are we going to move, and how are we going to walk? So there's so many opportunities in the midst of the trial and the struggle, like James says. How can we find joy in the midst of the struggles? Now, amongst us, we haven't had any diagnosis of any kind that we know of, and we're just getting close enough to breaking some kind of protocol somewhere about being in the same room, and I don't think we.
There's only 4 of us.
And
I think we're
there's
good.
only
there's
3
only
feet
4.
between us,
Yeah.
and
Well,
but that go ahead.
I appreciated, Michael, how you stayed in a place of feeling sad and grieving before you moved on to start to respond to the emails and start to move on to the next thing. And okay, God, what do you have? What's next? What's next? And it's easy to maybe to do that, but then we miss what he wants to do and how he wants to tend to our own hearts and what our own hearts needed to grieve. Like Sherry, you in that moment, to Ashley's point, go ahead and cry if you feel like crying. It's whoever offered that it's going to be okay. We're going to blah, blah, blah. Well, yes, but for right now, it's not okay. It's really hard and it really sucks. And you're grieving on so many levels. So I think that's really important to do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think
And let God tend to our hearts. Soul care is important during this time. Whatever we're feeling in this place where there's anxiety, where there's fear, or whatever. For one of our daughters, she got an extended extra week spring break. So whatever you're experiencing, whether this is the greatest thing ever or this is really terrifying, to walk with Jesus in that and take care of your soul care in the midst of it.
That's great.
It's important.
And then you may need some help.
Mm-hmm.
As we're walking in this, there's a lot of information, and it's revealing. I mean, we're not illegitimizing anybody's feelings, but there's a part of that you have to bring into alignment as well. Is this over the top? Is this not enough? I don't remember anybody in the room saying, "Well, hey, this is going to be God's going to make lemonade." It wasn't. I didn't hear that in our group. I think it was pretty sad across the board. I mean, there was a funeral that had been, a death had come, and we all honored that. I didn't hear anybody say to anybody not to feel a certain way, and it can be different for different people. But I think there is, because we've had conversations with our daughters who they've reached out because of it's over the top fear. And then we have family
disproportional, maybe,
it's when I mean it's revealing, and they've reached out, to be. So again, I don't want to illegitimize our daughters or any sense of fear or panic, but those emotions are there for a reason. The enemy wants to come and steal, kill, and destroy, and there's a reason why those passages say you don't have to be afraid. It's speaking to a people that are afraid, and it's an invitation to trust in the Father or trust in an oriented person who can bring a little bit of light to darkness, and a little bit of light does an incredible thing to darkness. But it's not, you're right, it's not don't feel that way, or it's get busy. I mean, this thing is so revealing on so many levels. Yeah. And to address it all is not our goal today, but but to stir up what are we experiencing, what are we feeling, how's this impacting us?
I think what you just said, Michael, that stirs up in me is to say that everyone's heard the cliche, right? It's when it's darkest, the light shines brightest. And I think we have an opportunity to shine that way here. Like we haven't. It's not that we haven't had an opportunity to stand out and be different.
No other circumstances.
And bring light to Jesus. But this is different. I mean, I can understand. I hear it from my son who's 25 too. When he goes into the grocery store and it's cleaned out. Yeah. I mean, when people are buying beets, things are bad, right? So sorry to all the beet lovers out there.
My sister loves
but
beets.
Really, I mean, or when all the spam is gone, I mean, people are desperate. So you see that kind of a response. And especially if you're younger, that may bring about a level of fear you haven't experienced before. And so for Sherry and I to be able to say to our son over the phone, it's going to be okay, Stephen. We've got more than enough food to last as long as it needs to last. We're going to be fine. Mm-hmm. And you know what? If we run out of food, we know who our provider is. It's God.
And you know a few hunters.
Yeah, absolutely. I've got 20 acres behind my house, and so
we're not there yet.
No, we're not. But Sherry knows how to grow tomatoes and cucumbers and all that. I mean, so it's going to be okay. We can.
Comfort.
So we really have an opportunity not to be irresponsible, but we have an opportunity to be a voice of reason in a world that is, in some instances, being unreasonable.
Yeah.
In their response.
Yeah. So I want to go back to Robin's, what she talked about at first, about taking care of her heart, her soul.
Yeah, the soul care.
And then you bringing up the flight attendant's message. You put your oxygen mask on first. So let's talk a little bit about, so where have you found courage in these last few days? Because when those calls come, you're relying on some perspective, some dose of reality, maybe some smelling salts that God has given you. You're going to be okay. Not the cliche-ish type, but what is it that's been shared with you or has come into your heart and mind and soul that specifically has had some kind of impact on your influence on those around you?
So the encouragement for my heart and the light, you guys were talking about bringing light to all of this, came for me the Saturday morning after the Friday night. It was my birthday. And the sunrise, which God and I have special moments over sunrises most days, was amazing. It was remarkable. It was 360 degrees of color. It was changing constantly. And honestly, it went on for so long. It was the longest sunrise.
It was just for you.
It was
on your birthday. But we saw it because you called me out to see it, Michael.
Yes.
It was amazing.
Stunning. I'll share. Your
But
birthday's
it was
in
for
March.
you.
And then from there, the sunrise is an invitation for me to step outside. And it's springtime. And so I'm walking through the yard and I sing and speak encouragement over the hellebores that I've recently transplanted that I got from a friend. And they're looking a little peppier than they had been the day before. And I see the hostas.
And those are flowers for those of you like
Yes.
myself who did not know until Sherry told me what a hellebore was.
Yes,
it
the
sounds
Lenten
like a Harry
rose.
Potter
Sounds like-
animal
Yeah.
or something, doesn't it? Yeah. Go attack the hellebore.
Yeah.
They're
No, it's
also
a
called
flower.
Lenten roses. So this is the time they come up.
Oh, cool.
And to see, as I start to pull back some of the leaves and such on the garden beds, seeing none of which I planted, they were all there before we bought the house, but to see the little lily of the valleys poking through and the hostas poking through, coming up out of the soil, and then to see in the backyard pulling back some of the leaves of some shrubs that I had planted intentionally, that I had propagated and put in this bed to overwinter and covered them carefully with leaves so that they would hopefully survive the winter. To see them starting to the leaves unfurl and the flowers starting to bloom, God just spoke to my heart, the overwhelmingness of creation knows what to do. And that these flowers are bringing such beauty in a time when we so need it.
Yeah.
And they're, totally unaware to how much I imagine they are needed. It was such a sweet and precious time that morning. It seemed to be the longest morning. Just spending that time out in the backyard amongst all the flowers, the smell of the viburnum wafting through the air. It was precious, really good for my heart.
We were walking together downtown Hillsboro, a little town near where we live, and Sherry and I took the advantage of the springtime weather and the empty streets, honestly, to take a walk around downtown. And we're seeing squirrels running around and, birds flying, and it just occurs to me, yeah, all of creation is moving on like none of this is happening.
Yeah, and for me, it was the other invitation was, let's see how it all unfolds. As we talked about what to do with our Monday night group. Well, let's see what unfolds. Right. We can't make every decision right now. It was the invitation to stay in the moment, take the information you have now, and make the decisions when they are actually needing to be made.
Which is walking with God.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Just really sweet.
Yeah.
It's really good.
Yeah. Other stories about how God's giving you courage? I love what Graham Cook says, that whatever he's going to ask of you, he's going to give you first.
Yeah.
So if you need courage, he's going to give it to you. If you need patience, then he's going to produce that in you. And it just seems to be like somebody grabbed the volume and turned it up a little bit which is really cool because apparently we needed the volume turned up a little bit.
Yeah.
And things are therefore heightened. Our concerns are greater. And not that you wouldn't have enjoyed that sunrise that day or those flowers peeking.
But you saw it differently.
Right. And the invitation, the courage for me is the slowing down, is the, it seems like in hindsight, after 9/11 happened, after Y2K, all those things, hurricanes, blizzards, it's like, you know what to do to prepare, you know what to do afterwards, and you just keep doing. But the courage for me was the invitation to slow down, to let it unfold, to not try to make all the decisions or fall into or find a new routine, but just to being open to giving myself the permission and kindness to slow down and be aware and move with him, whatever that might look like.
And into the next
that's
thing,
hard.
And the next thing, and the next thing. Until,
right.
And it is hard until it's not, right? Until you're recalibrated to this. I'm just jumping in with James 1. It's more true. The font is different. The italics is different. When you consider it pure joy when you encounter trials of various kinds. That is more true today than other days that I've come across that. So you walk across beauty and you don't notice it until something has been taken, until something in the climate or in the landscape is somehow out of sorts or out of place. And that's when we're invited, I think, to see more and hear more and to walk more deeply with God. Yeah, another one, 1 John 4:18. There is no fear in love. Perfect love casts out fear. And so that is a bigger verse for me. I'm not ready to go get a tattoo, but the spontaneous nature of how much more important that verse is to me than it was true 5 weeks ago. But you know what I mean? There's a more true to it. It's landing different because my life is different. And I need to know that and experience that as true.
So you're quoting scripture. I'm going to use a movie reference and go to Mr. Holland's Opus.
It's all sacred.
Yeah,
it's all spiritual.
And what I'm thinking of is the scene where Mr. Holland is trying to help the redhead Gertrude
Lang
play the clarinet, and she is trying to read the music and do it right and have the right. What am I trying to think of? The right
notes on a page.
Yeah, the right performance, the right her posture has to be just right. Her right technique. That's the word I was looking for. She wants to get all that just perfect, and she can't. And she keeps blowing the note, this one note at the same spot in the music over and over again. She squeaks the clarinet. If you've ever heard that sound, it's awful. And so what Mr. Holland so wisely tells her to do is to stop trying to play the notes on the page. And he asks her what she likes most about herself. It's her hair. Her daddy tells her it looks like the sunset. So he says, play the sunset. Pay attention, not to the notes on the page, not to the order that you think things should be done in, and the way and the proper technique and all that. Just pay attention to the beauty and go from there. And of course, with her eyes closed and the music stand pulled away, she plays it perfectly. And it reminded,
amazing scene.
It's brought back to my memory in the midst of all of this that, we are in a period, I don't know how long it's going to be. But the notes on the page, the way that we expect things to go, the way things we think they've been written, those have been taken away from us. And so we have to think about something else, other than the way we thought it was going to be, and focus. Maybe it is focusing on the hellebores as they're coming up, right? Maybe it's, okay, now we've got an opportunity to watch the sunrise rather than hopping in our car because we got to get in line first at Starbucks.
Right.
And pausing and slowing down and witnessing things around us. And it's a great opportunity.
For systems to be dismantled like they are through this, and to realize, I think, as we move through these days, what if in these days God was actually wanting to answer some of your personal prayers? We all are praying for, as parents, for example, we pray for our kids. Jesus, help me love my children. Well, guess when you get to hear that prayer answered is when they call, Dad, I'm scared.
Right.
And yet we don't connect the dots.
Mm-hmm.
We don't connect the offer for you to play the role that you are in and the prayers that you've asked, and so how do you answer those prayers? I think off mic, we were talking about, these are invitations. Many, many, many of these things are invitations to what's down in there. Like you said, Robin, if there's panic or if there's fear, it really might be an invitation to look back in your story. What's going on that I felt this before? And my reaction was to hoard things or to crawl in a corner and just, the sky is falling. And so that's what I mean earlier about there's certain things. I think it was our friend Jay Stott years ago, what's in the well comes out in the bucket, right? We all know that when things get more intense, that's when things come up. And if you can observe what that is, feel what you're feeling, see what you're seeing, and maybe even get some help from, because the beautiful thing about you, Robin, and there's many, many, I'm going to go down the list, but one of the beautiful things is you can see things for me that I can't see when I'm in the drama.
And vice versa.
And vice versa.
Yep.
Having a witness to your life like that, having somebody who can say, we're talking about this in your marriage just the other day. You saw something can we talk about that? That reaction, that response of SJ. Right. And those can be either the most awkward invitations or they can be the greatest invitations. You just have to take a step or two in that direction and see.
I don't remember what you're talking about. What was it? I'm kidding.
There'll be another podcast
she can remember,
on this.
I bet.
There'll
she can
Do you
remember.
really want me to say it now?
No. No. Robin, you've been taking notes over there. What
else is coming
landing
up
on your heart or coming up in your heart?
Well, the question of courage, for me, courage comes from a place of being settled, comes from a settled place and being filled up and a place of belovedness for me. And yesterday, the Bible Gateway, I don't know if any of you get the Bible Gateway verse of the day, but I loved yesterday's when I was even thinking of some of these things in this podcast. And the verse was part of Psalm 23, a psalm of David. The Lord is my shepherd, I lack nothing. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters. He refreshes my soul. He guides me along the paths for his name, the right paths for his name's sake. And I love all of the imagery there, even in light of where we are with the current state of things, and just that he refreshes my soul. And I wonder how I'm allowing him to do that or not. It's not automatic, but he will if I allow him and partner with him. And so I think it's a beautiful invitation to what things refresh my soul, what things do restore my soul. And I love what you said, Sherry, about beauty, going for walks, fresh air and beauty and worship music. Anything Hillsong refreshes and restores my soul because it invites my eyes to be on Jesus.
Yeah, we've all been thrown into an ocean of need.
Yeah.
Where, you just don't get to go there in comfort and convenience, and again, I'm grinning because I need that from time to time. I mean, it's amazing what struggle, trial, what disruption and provocation can cause. It can have its collateral damage the other way. The enemy is right there with fear and that virus trying to, again, not to make light of it, but there is probably more pandemic spiritual virus of fear. The spirit of fear is moving and landing on more hearts than are going to get this coronavirus. And so that's where the real battle is. And that's where I think the real opportunity to turn to God and see what, I'm not diminishing the coronavirus. This is a serious thing.
No, but you're right.
But there are people who've been living with spiritual viruses for far too long. And what if God wants to bring healing and a cure and a preventative
to that,
to those hearts and
we
lives?
need to pray against
fear.
that very specifically, daily, ongoing, against a spirit of fear. And again, we also, there's an element to which we allow certain things to come to us and fill our hearts and minds via our phone, email, the news. We get to put that down or turn off notifications. And I know for me on Instagram, I have filtered through it and deleted everything that isn't life-giving to me. And so I'm paying attention and watching the accounts that bring beauty and offer life and humor. And I think it's really good to laugh right now. It's really good. We were sharing some funny memes and stuff at our team meeting the other day. It's important to laugh.
Yeah.
And to notice beauty. And I'm telling you, some of y'all have probably seen it, but I'm loving seeing the videos from Italy where people have these balconies and they are quarantined and have been for a long time now, or I don't know how long, but it's been some time.
10 days.
At least weeks.
And there's on these balconies in Italy, and you see an older couple dancing. And another man playing on his balcony across the street, playing a violin beautifully, and people singing out their windows.
I saw
There's a
male tenor singing
Oh my gosh.
to his down the valley to his city. I mean, it was beautiful.
It is.
That doesn't happen.
Right. When the cars are running around
Right.
and everyone's
Unless this
busy.
is- yeah.
Right. So
And if it does happen, they're like, shut up.
Shut
you know what I'm
up.
saying?
I know. So, but we get to choose what we engage in, what we let in, and what we offer.
That's great. I mean,
yeah.
what's weird one day
Right.
is beauty another.
And
right?
life-giving.
And life-giving,
Another day.
Yeah.
I think courage to me has looked a certain way my whole life. I've been a firefighter. I've done all kinds of things that required kind of running into things that people were running away from. And courage now for me, and part of it's because I'm turning 50 this year, and things are just a little different as you get a little older. You have a little less gumption to just, well, let's just get up and run in there, There's a little more wisdom coming in, but courage in these times, this scenario, what I'm wrangling in my heart is the courage to not immediately react to things, but rather to take a breath and maybe 3 and respond instead. And so
that's good.
When I see the shelves empty and I see a line at a gas station, what is requiring courage for me is to say, you know what, God's our provider, and I've got 3/4 of a tank of gas in my truck already, and we've got 24 rolls of toilet paper at our house. It's going to be fine.
Or I am maybe going to run out of gas right here, and let's see how God's going to provide, or my fellow human neighbor
and
may.
so that is, that's requiring me to think of courage, being courageous in a little bit different way than maybe I have in the past.
Yeah.
That's good.
The courage to, yes, Robin, believe that God is up to something. We even prayed that several times over the last week, listeners. Jesus, what are you up to in this? What are you up to? And so in the bigger picture, but in the smaller picture too, what are you up to? Yeah. How can I show you to these folks and remain calm and remain courageous when things aren't going the way maybe I thought they should go?
Yeah.
And kind.
Yeah.
Don't you think kindness is a huge thing right now?
It is.
We need it, and it's so good to offer it, to have the courage to offer.
I love the word kindness. I love the word loving kindness even more. That to me, kindness, is great. Loving kindness really puts meat on the bones for me, because it's just more descriptive somehow. And so,
it's the heart of the Father, right?
We need loving kindness right now. And that, I don't know what that's going to look like for you, for me, for any of us today, tomorrow, the next hour. I don't know what that's going to look like, but.
So just as we wrap up, I got to go back to, so did we need loving kindness 5 weeks ago?
Yes.
5 months ago? I mean,
but in a different way.
So my point is, there are things in these circumstances, friends, that can be embraced. There are packages, Christmas packages for your heart in the midst of. Was there Christmas during World War II? Yes. Were there packages? I mean, C.S. Lewis delivered what became Mere Christianity through the BBC in the 40s during wartime.
Right.
I mean, so we don't know fully what's coming and the fruit of it, or what's going to bloom in time, what's waiting to be unearthed and uncovered. Mm-hmm. And so back to the adventure of walking with God. And yes, this invitation, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. Fear not. I'm with you. And so I know that's easier said, but we're here to say that it also can be done.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and cultivated in this time.
Right. And the invitation to intimacy with God for all of that. You know, I hope we'll be back with some more, because I know I've got 4 more pages of notes. You guys have 4 more pages of notes, but and I think that it is our heart to encourage and impart courage to our friends and allies during this time. There's some stuff on our Zoe Allies Facebook page now. Our website is going to have some free things, more free things. We're talking about adding to that daily.
Yeah.
And so if you have any questions or concerns, or you need to reach out and get some help, you need to talk to somebody. We've said this on almost every podcast, right? And maybe that's not been
Thursday was episode 100,
and we say it every time, and we've gotten a handful.
Yeah.
And yet these circumstances, maybe we'll get a chance to be encouraging to more people who would have the courage to ask for help. And invite a conversation.
I would love to hear some questions, about these times that we're in.
Yeah.
We don't have all the answers, but maybe we can just talk about it and bring some things to the surface.
Funny how talking about it can bring some light.
No doubt.
And, and encouragement.
So listeners, if you've enjoyed this episode, this special episode called Courage During Hard Times, share it with your friends. Share it around. Hopefully it was helpful to you. And you know what? It was helpful to me.
Me too. Yeah.
I hope you all felt this way. But any last thoughts before we land the plane? Last encouragements?
Well, I love that Robin brought up Psalm 23, because for me, that is a psalm of life. And
you usually hear it at funerals, right? But it's really a psalm of life.
Yeah, it's an invitation to walk with Jesus and all of it and everything.
And I've got another psalm, too, that I have to say, if there's one takeaway from this podcast, I would encourage you to look up Psalm 91 in the Passion Translation. You can find that at Bible Gateway. But to pray Psalm 91 over yourself, substituting the words I and me instead of you, is a great psalm of courage, courage.
There's more loving kindness and more fierce tenacity in that psalm. It's phenomenal. It's really interesting how God is tender and fierce in that psalm. And we need both of those.
And you do have the freedom to do that, listeners. You can take the psalm and put your name in the place of a pronoun, or I, as Robin suggested. But that's a great...
Yeah, I don't mean it's changing the meaning, but whether by night or by day, demonic danger will not trouble you. And so you say, it will not trouble me.
Right.
You're
speaking
it. I'm speaking it over myself.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's great. All right. So listeners, thank you again for tuning in on this special episode of Exploring More. Our email address is exploringmore@zoe.org. If you have any of those questions or would like to give us feedback about this episode, and if you would to give us a rate and review on your podcast platform, it helps other people find us. And as I said, and Michael said too, we've got plenty of free resources for you available on zoe.org. We hope we'll take advantage of them. And we'll be back soon. I don't know if we're going to continue in our Pillars of Zoe series next Thursday, or if we're going to move a little further into this discussion. I guess you'll find out when we do,
unfold.
Right? Yeah, we're going to let it unfold.
We shall see.
Yeah.
We shall see.
Thank you guys for being with us today, and we'll see you next time.